So I called up all of my designer friends and leaders in the UX community and asked them, how can a beginner UX designer start a UX project from scratch? So today you will learn how to ask better questions and define your UX problem statement, do a competitor analysis using Mobbin, who are also the sponsors of this video, and create a product requirement document or PRD that you can discuss with your developers and product managers. By the end of this video, you will have design checklists that you need to discuss with your product managers and developers when you're working on an app. We're also giving away free subscriptions to Mobbin. Details will be revealed by the end of this video. Assume that I'm a solo UX designer working at a finance consulting firm called OpenLedger that wants to make a mobile budgeting app for iOS. They have never made an app before, and it's traditionally an offline consulting firm for new businesses and startups based in India. They have developers and product managers, but they don't have any mobile design experience. They have a website beforehand, so they have a bit of their brand palette and some typography guidelines, but nothing very concrete. So now I'll take you through every single process of how I and other design leaders would approach this project. The framework that I will share with you is not only for professional designers, but also for beginners who are working on their first 3 case studies. So let me quickly jump to my laptop and show you how exactly will we take this through. Now, the website that you see right now is called Mobbin, and this can help a solo designer or a new designer avoid a lot of mistakes. The first brief I get from my CEO is this, that Ansh, I want to make a mobile budgeting app that looks like our competitors, and their competitors includes companies like Revolut or Plum. So if I go here and if I just search for Revolut, this is an app that basically helps you manage your finances. So it says one app, all things money, and the category is finance, crypto, and Web3. So as a young designer, without actually downloading the app, I can actually see all the important flows that they have. Now, the brief also explains that I want our customers to manage all of their money using this app, and also access a store where we as a consulting firm can upsell more consulting services. So as soon as I get the brief right, the first thing that I should do is probably go to Mobbin and actually search for budgeting apps and not just look for competitors. So if I go here and type budgeting and just search, I will be able to search through almost 1800 screens. So as you can see, there's a bunch of different apps, and now I can go through each and every one of them. So it becomes very easy to get this information within seconds that would otherwise take me days to find. Now, the most important thing that you need to do before you start working is to actually ask deeper questions about your company, your app, and the resources that you have right now to ship this project. See, AI is rapidly changing the way UX designers work. The lines between a designer, product manager, and developer are getting blurred out. Companies will soon need people who understand 4 core skills: defining the problem statements, finding patterns across data and trends, analyzing business metrics, and predicting customer behavior. For example, if I were to go to an app like say Buddy, a junior UX designer would probably focus on just the interface design, right? Like, oh, they have great typography, they have these cards. But the important question here is that if I go to the flows section, what kind of flows have they created? What kind of user journeys has this app created? So when we talk about say wallet, and if we go to the entire flow of creating a wallet, how exactly have they done it? Why have they done it? Why have they chosen just 3 items in a single screen? What happens when I go from here to here? So as you can see, you can save these images, you can copy these as well. You can also copy them and directly paste them into Mobbin's Figma plugin. So they've actually created a Figma plugin inside your files where you can just copy, paste, and access all of these things. So if I go from screens to prototype, when I'm researching, right, when I'm trying to find patterns, I can actually click and see what they have done. And if I click somewhere else, you can actually see the hotspots, right? So you can restart the prototype. So overall, as a designer, you can't just focus on making good looking screens and making design components, right? It's very, very important for you to actually understand how consumers will behave with your app. So as my CEO gives a brief, as a solo designer in a company that has never made an app, it is my duty to ask questions about the intent behind making this app. Questions that help us define the end goal for this app. The problem is most designers don't know what to ask. They don't have enough experience to ask the right questions. And obviously, when you go through all of these apps, right, you always feel that, oh, maybe they started with wireframes, maybe they start with features. But the truth is, every single senior designer actually starts with questions. And this is where Mobbin and ChatGPT together can be a lifesaver.
सबसे पहले, okay, I'll also tell you what I do. Maybe, people will be able to associate what they should also perhaps do. And yeah, the answer is same. It's not that, the AVP is doing something, a designer doing something else. No, it's probably same. The first thing what I feel a designer should do when the founder gives a brief from the context that you have set is to reflect on the brief. Reflect on the brief with just his or her own self. Read through the brief, try and understand, try to read between the lines that are not mentioned, and try and go do some Google search and find out more about it. Try to understand if there are more competitors who are doing something similar. What could be the challenges into doing this, and should we even do that? So at the end of it, the person should have the answers to if this is even worth building. Of course, this may not be an option because it's coming from the founder, but in a way, understand what the risks could be, what are the opportunities, who are the competitors. And as a part of this exercise, they will also have a lot of questions. So the byproduct of this exercise is also gather all these questions and ask it to the founder. It is impossible that anyone has ever given you a brief and you have no questions at all.
I think what I like to do starting off is understand the scope of the project. So speaking directly to the person who is the stakeholder, the one who makes the final decisions, the key things I try to get an understanding of are the time available, what success looks like to them. So they're like, hey, in 1 month, we need an app out. Maybe that's success to them. Or they're like, hey, we want to get a certain feature out. We already have an app and this needs to go out by next week, right? So timeline is super important for me. Understanding desired outcome is important. As aligned as I can be to the vision that the founder or the stakeholder has, the better it is. So that's usually where I start. And then scoping it out, typically I try to figure out, there's no end to the number of features that can be built. There is also no end to how much benefit you can really give to the user in everything you do. But we don't have unlimited time. And so we got to start with what's the core benefit? What exactly is that going to be? And then what's the version that we can do right now? So it's a little bit of balancing the crazy vision, the possibilities that can happen. And on the other end, okay, what realistically do we want to attempt and do really well?
Okay. Yeah. So if we think about that, I always start off with understanding what sort of company are you and how are you going to make money? If you have to make money, what is important for you? What do you need, right? Because if you're a ride-sharing app, it's different. If you're a budgeting app, it's different. If you are a neobank, it's different. So how do you make money is probably the most important thing. That's the first thing you want to ask. And second is, which stage is the company at right now? And I sort of put it into 3 phases. Are you in the growth phase, or are you like an established company, or are you like focusing on revenue rather than getting more customers, right? You could be in any of the 3 phases over here. So if you have like less than 100 employees or 200 employees, you're probably focusing on growth and not revenue, right? So if you focus on growth, then your main use case is to get more users on the platform, get more downloads, and essentially convert them to active users. And I think at this point, unless the founders, the CEO know what they're doing, talking to users at this point is helpful because these first customers are the ones that are going to shape everything.
So now that I know what I know, I would first have very clear conversations with the founder to understand what is it that they want to get out of the first version, or how much time do they want to spend on it, how many resources do they want to spend on it, and then make a plan accordingly. It will force everybody to think and not start designing and then think that, oh, this is not even technically possible. Oh, we don't have the operations to do this. So it's better to have a picture of what resources do we have in the company, what are we trying to achieve with this design, and how much design time do you want to give to this, and what type of a company are you? Like, are you a user delight company? Like, are you somebody like Cred, or are you somebody like a Google Pay who's focusing on functionality more than the delight and the visual appeal and, all those fancy stuff? Because the amount of time and detail and the kind of resources you'll need to onboard for each of this will be very different. So in the past, I worked with a founder who was very, very detail oriented. So he wanted everything to be mapped out to the T. Like how would the filters work? How would the sorting work? Like that much detail. But currently, like, after that, I worked with a founder who was like, I want the overall picture of how this is going to look like. So please design a not a very comprehensive one, but like a overall, this is how the entire app is going to look like. So he focused on the information architecture more than the little minute details. So I think understanding who you're working with is the first step.
Firstly, I'll go to ChatGPT and I'll simply use a template that I regularly use to get a list of clarity questions for my app. So basically, I can prompt about who I am and where I work, and then I will ask ChatGPT to make a list of deeper questions that me and my team can actually use to get clarity on how we need to approach this app. Okay, if you find any gaps or doubts, please feel free to ask me. Now, once I get all of these questions, before I ask all of my stakeholders, I should actually make a list of some very, very important apps that I need to survey and then check how are these questions being answered in those apps. So if I go here and on my app section, if I go to filters, right, I can simply go to app categories and they have a bunch of different categories, right? So if I go to the very bottom, let's check. I'll go to finance and they have over 65 apps within finance. Let's just say we go to Quicken, which is around personal finance. And let's just say I really, really like one of the flows. Okay. Let's just say this is one flow. Let's take a complicated flow actually. Let's take an adding a transaction flow. Now what I can do is I can actually take a screenshot. Okay, this is where the fun begins. I can go to ChatGPT, and by the way, they have created a bunch of questions and I will take you through how these questions are organized and how do you actually sort of go through them. But I can click on this attach files icon, upload this screenshot right here and say, can you check this app who's my competitor and tell me some important patterns they've used in their UI, important elements that are very important to add in the flow, all the edge cases that I need to know about. Because you have access to all of these screenshots from Mobbin and because you have access to ChatGPT, it'll analyze the screenshot and actually extract all of the information and then get all the important patterns and give you a list of all the edge cases. And while it is doing that, if I go here, and by the way, we've already gotten the answer, so it's writing it down. I can actually go from transactions to adding a transaction, adding a split transaction. So these are flows within flows, and this is the architecture of the entire app. But as you can see, even ChatGPT is able to go through immense detail. Now, when we talk about asking questions, right, there is a certain category of questions that you have to ask. These can be around your target audience, your competitor insights, priorities for each feature, technical constraints, legal and compliance, and even for your brand identity, which is not for developers, but basically for the marketing team. Now, without getting clarity on these basic things, you should never start a UX project. Even if you're doing this for your freelancing company, you have to make sure that you're asking these questions to yourself. And when you're making your case study, you should actually take all of these questions and make sure that you answer these questions one by one. Now, when you make a list of these questions, obviously you'd have to discuss this with a lot of people.
Even if you have a client, I think doing contextual research is important because you get a view from them, you get a perspective from them, but you need to understand that on your own and how it works right now in the world. So also understand how it, there might be a lot of products that already exist. A lot of products might be doing the same things that your client or you want to do in that project. So doing research on how they are doing it, what they're doing, what are some best practices that they have applied, I think that is important.
So we got to start with what's the core benefit? What exactly is that going to be? And then what's the version that we can do right now? So it's a little bit of balancing the crazy vision, the possibilities that can happen. And on the other end, okay, what realistically do we want to attempt and do really well?
And these few early meetings are extremely fundamental in a design project. Most companies and designers just spend 3-4 days brainstorming and then 30-40 days designing. I would recommend you to spend at least 1 week going deeper into what you actually want to do and then keep refining your problem statement. In my mobile budgeting app case, I should ask my CEO and product managers as to what are the primary business goals for this app. And this could be anything. It could be increasing customer engagement, which means that you have some customers for your offline business and now you want a way to integrate yourself into their daily life. The goal could be for generating new consulting leads, where for your expensive services you have some kind of a call to action. Or it could be driving revenue through in-app purchases or any extra add-ons for your consulting firm. You need to ask, how will we measure the success of this app? So do you want 10,000 monthly active users? There's a word for it. It's called MAUs. Or do you want to sideline MAUs and focus on niche users who have high retention, which means they spend a lot of time on the app? Or is it average revenue per user, where you don't even care about the volume of users on the app, but you check how many people are buying the in-app purchases? You can also ask if the goal is to replace the offline operations entirely or complement them. And these are contextual questions, right? And you can use Mobbin and ChatGPT together to get more clarity on how your competitors are doing something similar. Because if I go to the finance section, you can see there is so much that these people have already done for you.
So if your client says, we want beautiful screens, and if you start arguing that your research is more important, they will definitely not get it. So you have to be very subtle with your design process when it comes to a stubborn client or a stubborn company you're working with. What I mean by that is very simple. If they understand the language of beautiful screens, give them those beautiful screens. But when you actually go into a meeting with them, you can always help them understand why you have made that decision of creating, say, a button or a card, which is very beautiful to look at, but why you've done that, and help them understand that process, and also help them understand what benefits they will get from that. Splitting such projects can be tricky because you're, again, a lone designer working on a singular project. Try to split it into, once again, prioritize the splits. So if you're spending, say, 1 month on that project and you have to really show beautiful screens, make sure 2 weeks out of those 1 month are just for UI design, interaction design, prototypes, you name it. Anything that is visually adhering to them. Then, of course, start off everything with research. Do a little bit of market research on your own. Again, if you're a single designer, just go for secondary research. You don't have to always come up with real life data from real users in your company. It could be secondary research, it could be research of your competitors, it could be anything of that sort.
So this will make you understand what are the priorities of this company, what can we learn from them. And when you show this to your developers, when you show this to your PMs and your founders, for them, understanding and translating ideas becomes way more easy. When you're starting out, you also need to ask the OS for which you are building this for. Is it iOS? Is it Android? Or is it both? Because when you make something for just the iOS, it has to be made using the iOS guidelines. You have to use the iOS native development environments called Swift. For Android, it's called Kotlin. And you can Google and ChatGPT about all these things one by one. It's not that difficult, but you need to know these things as a designer. Now, if you want to make an app for both of them, which I do not recommend for a beginner startup, you can use something like React Native or Flutter. Now, as I said, don't panic if you don't know these words. In fact, a fun feature inside Mobbin is that you have access to both iOS and Android apps. So they have also added a section where you have the same apps across different platforms. If I go to web, you can also search across landing pages as well, which is incredible. So you have apps, you have screens, you have marketing pages. They have done so much of research in one single place. Once you are in the research mode, right, you just need to learn the basics of prompting. I've already explained all of these things in our howtoprompt.in website. There's so many masterclasses. But coming back to the list of questions, you need to ask, does your company have an existing design system or a brand palette? If yes, how do you use it? If not, should you get a kit? Should you duplicate some libraries inside Figma? Because that will help you save a lot of time.
Every designer has their own process. For me, if I was in that position, I would just pick whatever found less intimidating to me, or anything that I really liked or enjoyed, right? I don't think you should break your head too much at this point in time. And you have to start from somewhere, right? You can use an existing template or existing UI kit that you have. If if you are very specific about, I don't know, your brand guidelines, how the UI should look, maybe your CEO or founder likes a specific app, then you can build a design system that way. But I think just pick what you can get. And then over a period of time, the company has to start building a taste of what it wants, right? And you as a designer need to start building a taste. It could be right from, it could be as small as how the icons look to all the way, what sort of banners will you have? Will you have videos, imagery, animations? I think that tone takes time. So if you're starting from absolutely zero, just start something rough. Just start with anything. You need to have enough so that people can give enough feedback, right? It could be all positive feedback or it could be all negative feedback, but you need to have something. I mean, maybe something's not the right word. You need to have enough substance to get this feedback from, right?
Now, while you're asking all of these tough questions, you need to document everyone's thoughts using a tool. This could be a Notion page, this could be a Loom video. Every single company has its own different ways. I've already taught Notion and documentation in a very extensive course. I will share the link in description. Now, to make this video more actionable, let me give you a proper timeline of how you can approach this entire exercise. So let's just say you get a feature and let's just say you're making a web app and maybe like a dashboard, right? So you've been given to make a dashboard and you have all of these cool things. Now, the problem is, how do you even plan for this? So once you get a basic brief from your CEO or your team, you need to spend one full day preparing a list of questions for your stakeholders and then spend at least 1 to 2 hours reviewing your project brief, the target audience and existing apps to get as much context as you can. The more time you spend on this research right here, the better it is. Use ChatGPT to make 3 question banks. One for your CEO, where you define the business goals, user needs, revenue model, and timelines. These are extremely important. One question bank should be for your developers. You need to ask all the technical constraints, existing technical stack, and all the limitations that they might have as a team. So if you are making, say, an app inside Android, and you're probably making something for the subscription and paywall, you can actually see how other people are running their subscription apps. So if you go to something like this, and if you're trying to make something similar, instead of you designing, you can actually have a discussion with your developers and say that, can we make something like this, right? Is it possible to do all of these things? And they themselves will tell you all the technical limitations that they have. The third question bank should be for your product managers. You need to ask what kind of features do they want to prioritize first and why. If your company does not have a product manager, you can simply have these discussions with the developer and the CEO together. You need to have one call with all these 3 teams, all of the stakeholders, your CEO, your developer, and your product manager together, where you go through the CEO and the product manager question bank together in front of everyone. The developer question bank only needs to be discussed within the developers, otherwise the call can get very, very stretched. Once this first day exercise is complete, you need to make a list of all of your findings on a tool like Notion.
So we've tried a lot of different things in the company that I'm working at right now. There is like that Scribble AI note taker on everybody's call. So that thing does make notes and give you like gist of what was discussed, but it's better to write like, okay, this is what we decided to do and this is what we're going to do. Like, this is what we're going to pick. This is the engineer's job, this is the designer's job, and this is the product person's job. Like, after the call, like spending 5 minutes and just writing that down has helped us a lot. And to track like minuter details, we're using a software called Linear. But that's a bug reporting software, but we tried to use it as a documentation software too. But that didn't work so well. So we moved back to Notion now. Like, those are the tools, but everybody has a very different level of detail when they're writing something down.
On day number 2, you need to scan your competitors on Mobbin. So I've already shown you how this works. If you go to Mobbin, you will find all kinds of relevant ideas. And if I were to go to Figma, let me actually show you how the Figma plugin looks like. So I will press Command/, and as soon as I search for Mobbin, you'll have a option to select the plugin. If you cannot see it, just go to plugins and widgets and select Mobbin. I'll click on run. Now, once I have chosen a flow category, I can simply select any flow I want and click on this copy icon, go back here, and then simply do paste. Within seconds, I'll have all of my screens sorted. Can you imagine how crazy useful can this be for you? And I would recommend you to actually take things to the next level by first analyzing all of your screenshots from Mobbin. And then once you have shortlisted apps that you feel are really, really valuable or relevant to your research, you can download them and use them yourself, and then save all of this media on Figma so that you have enough references. Another very cool technique is that you can go to the App Store reviews of your competitors and see what other people are complaining about. So that will give you a lot of insight on what your customers might want. Now, all of this research will help you discuss timelines and requirements with your developers way more practically. On day number 3, you need to finalize your features and timelines. So you need to split your entire list of tentative features into must-have features and nice-to-have features. And all of this research will help you understand what is a must-have and what is nice to have. And in most cases, the must-to-have features are the ones that will help your business get more retention, get more revenue. Please focus on building the must-have features first. Now, how do you decide that? You need to go to Mobbin and see what features are looking most useful to you as the customer, and then align those features, that entire list that you create, with the business needs of your specific company. So the questionnaire that we made for the CEO and the PM, all of those answers will help us now. Do not make anything that does not align with your company's business goals for the next 1 quarter. Once you're done, you will move to day number 4, where you have to create a proper PRD, which is a product requirement document. Now, PRD is a document that clearly defines what you need to make in this specific app or in this specific feature in a dedicated timeline. And this is how a basic structure looks like. You can anytime duplicate any templates or get them from ChatGPT, but basically you need to have a brief description of the app, its core goals, and the problem it solves. And this could not be for an app, it could also be the first 5 features as well. Then you need to summarize all of the business goals. So you need to actually write down all the specific expectations that have been provided by the CEO or your product managers. Then you have to write down about your target audience, list the primary user personas, then all your features. What are the must-have features for the MVP, the first prototype, and what are the nice-to-have features for future iterations. Then technical requirements. You need to document any specific interactions or complicated things that you're planning to do, and document any tech stack or backend requirement that has been mentioned by the developers. If there are any design constraints or any specific design guidelines or any references from other competitors, please mention that as well. And most importantly, you need to add the expected timeline for delivering the first draft of the designs and then the developer handoff as well. If you do not know how to do developer handoff, you can anytime watch our free Figma course and our free 9-week course on learnUIUX.in. It is only after this intense exercise that you can even start working on Figma, because there are so many moving parts. Now, most designers think that their entire work is about making UI or conducting research. They focus too much on what to do and how to do it, but they barely spend enough time thinking about why we need to do this. With AI coming in, you need to improve the way you think about the why behind the things that you do. And I know I've mentioned too many things, so here is a very short checklist for each and every important stage of what you need to do when you start your first mobile app project. And you can download a PDF of this checklist, or either use it digitally. We'll put a Notion page as well, so you can use that for your internal documentation. To win a Mobbin subscription, you need to comment below your top learnings without using ChatGPT blindly. And if you use ChatGPT, please delete the double quotes. You have to write down what you have learned in minimum 50 words. And once you have put that comment below in the YouTube section, you need to make a LinkedIn post with the same learnings. You need to copy the link to that LinkedIn post and submit it to us via the giveaway form in description. And top comments, top social media posts will get a free Mobbin subscription from us. All the details about the subscription and the giveaway are in the description. Now, this is how the checklist looks like. First, we will check our business goals. You need to ask, have I documented what the company wants to achieve with this app? Example, increase user retention, or generating consulting leads, or increase a specific revenue part by X%. Do I know the KPIs or the metrics that will be used by the product team to measure the success of this app? Is it monthly active users? Is it retention rate? Is it average revenue per user? And all of these things will help you prioritize what to solve for. Have I identified the current business challenges that the app will solve? Could be reducing the dependency on offline operations. It could be automating customer support. Then we check our target audience. where we spend enough time understanding our users deeply to figure out what we need to design for them. So you need to ask yourself, have I defined at least 2 to 3 core user personas based on any interviews or any questions that I've asked from my team members? This could be young professionals, it could be freelancers, it could be business owners, it could be B2B, it could be B2C. Then do I know what specific problems users face in managing their finances? Because we're talking about a budgeting app, right? And going through Mobbin flows will actually help you understand what kind of problems are other people already solving for. Example, is it difficulty tracking expenses? Or is it managing multiple bank accounts? How are these people solving for the same problems? Do I have any insights on what my users want to achieve by using this app? For example, do they want to keep a track of their daily expenses? Or do they want to receive any financial tips on how they should file their taxes in a specific quarter of the year? Then we need to spend enough time doing a very deep competitor analysis and write down what your competitors are doing and where there is an opportunity to differentiate yourself. Have I reviewed at least 2 to 3 direct competitors using Mobbin? Have I noted the core features that all of my competitors are offering? Have I identified gaps in their user experience where we can improve, and sort of build on top of what these people have done? Maybe they have a complicated onboarding. Maybe they have missed out a very specific interaction. So can we fix that? Have I documented all the common UI patterns that have been used by our competitors? And they have a proper section here called UI elements, where if I go to the filter section, you can actually see how all of these different people have created each and every important component one by one, which could be a game changer when you're approaching your interface design. After this, we get clarity on features and prioritization, where you need to ask yourself, have I listed out all the important features that this app could have? In our case, it could be expense tracking, an AI chatbot, a consulting store, whatever it may be. Have I categorized these features into must-have features and nice-to-have features? Have I confirmed the feature prioritization with the CEO and the product managers? Have I noted any feature dependencies? It could be a backend API that would be required for the AI chatbot. So if you're planning to have a chatbot which is running on ChatGPT, you need to ask your backend team that, do you know how to set up the APIs? All of these things need to be discussed upfront. After this, we need to get clarity on the branding and design system guidelines. And I've taught almost every single important foundational concept already. I'll paste all the links in description. But overall, you need to ask yourself, have I created my primary and secondary color palette for the app? Have I created at least the basic button system, the input system, the typography that will fit the app's tone? Have I started building all the reusable components like forms, cards, and modals? Have I finalized what icon library I need to import? So box icons and remix icons are the easiest open source libraries out there. So all of these questions together will help you get a lot of clarity. Now that you have heard the perspective of so many other senior designers, I'm sure that there would be a lot of actionable items for you. But we are just getting started, because this is actually a multi-part series. We have only discussed how do you even define and refine your prompt statements? How do you start? But just starting is not good enough, right? I actually have to teach you how do you approach the design system? How do you approach the interface design? How do you go through all the different guidelines? But I will release the next part only if I get 2,000 subscribers from this video and at least 2,000 feedback comments on this video, and they have to be unique comments. The next episode will deep dive into interface design and how you can create wireframes and UI elements using Mobbin. By the way, you can get access to Mobbin from the link that I've shared in description. I have been using Mobbin since at least 6 years for sure. I was in college, I think, when I started using it. By the way, we're also launching our advanced offline and online courses for professional designers with more than 1 year of experience, where I'm teaching UX, AI, and productivity. This QR code will lead you to the waitlist form. We will shortlist eligible students and share them details about the offline and online courses. Don't forget to tag us in your notes on LinkedIn and Instagram. This is your dost Ansh Mehra signing out. If you want to know about how artificial intelligence will change the world of user experience, then watch this video.